Welcome to the Just Build Wealth podcast. I'm Ryan Ross.
And I'm Mike Ross.
The Just Build Wealth podcast is focused on simplifying wealth building. If you're trying to understand the strategies, systems, and processes that go into building companies, assets, and wealth, you're in the right place. With each guest, we aim to dig into their business and the industry they work in to gain a better understanding of how they are building wealth for themselves and helping others do so. In this episode of Just Build Wealth, we speak with Allegra Bandy, a content creator and the founder of Oddua Publishing. In this conversation, we discuss the process of making an audiobook, the audiobook industry in general, and we talk about how Allegra works exclusively with authors who narrate their own books and why people narrate audiobooks in the first place. We discuss what has surprised her clients about what is easy about making an audiobook and some of the challenges authors face in making audiobooks. One example is pronouncing multisyllabic words is very tough. We then talk about how Audible and other platforms are affecting the audiobook industry and which platforms are better for authors. And we discuss how Oddua was started, and much, much more. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this interview with Allegra Bandy. Well, Allegra Bandy, welcome to the show. Can you give us a little 30-second intro to yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan and Mike, for having me. A little introduction for me. I am the CEO and creative producer of Oddua Publishing and Oddua Productions here in Oakland, California. We produce and publish nonfiction, author-narrated audiobooks. And we've been in business for about 11 years now. And it's been super fun. And we are currently in the process of building out our brick and mortar space here in Oakland. And but for the most part, we record with our clients, our author clients, all over the country. So wherever our authors are, we will find a recording studio and that's close to them for them to work out of. So
interesting. So I am curious just about how the broader audiobook world works. And you mentioned just now, you're building brick and mortar. Now, is that something that, do people usually start with brick and mortar, or do they start being more mobile, as it sounds like you guys do, or is it kind of as demand requires?
well, in speaking to some of my colleagues who have been in the audiobook industry for a little bit now, a lot of them started in their closets. The audiobook industry has been growing very fast, actually, within the last 13, 14 years has been really taking off with the advent of Audible and with the technology of our mobile devices being able to stream and download audio content on demand. So with that availability, so has the industry grown of people creating audiobooks. So a lot of people have started, just bootstrapped it in their closets, in their home spaces, made soundproof spaces. And then eventually, after a time, a lot of my colleagues have built out studios for themselves or have partnered with already existing studios to work out of. So to have professional spaces where you can mitigate your environmental noise, that's been really important.
So I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to answer it, or have you answer it as the gold standard, right? Why would you start in a closet?
Oh, what a great question. Okay, so right now I'm in my office. It's not ideal for me as an audio professional to not have a completely soundproof space. right now, I don't know if you can hear in the mic, I have my heater going. I have construction workers going outside
Mhm.
building the studio. I have a yippy little dog next door. And I can't really manage that environmental noise or eliminate it, right? It's something that kind of just is my environment. It's not a controlled environment. So people will take a closet that has already an enclosed space where they can treat that space. And when I mean treat, they can put up acoustical foam. They can use their existing clothes in there to absorb the sound.
Mm.
Um, it, they use that smaller space to make it a more closed in intimate sound in their
Mm.
microphone. Otherwise, you're probably going to get the reflection from your walls, your windows, maybe hear your heater or your refrigerator running in your house. So, um, a lot of people have found that, oh, I can turn my closet into a little recording booth.
Mhm.
So,
So that's the case for the smaller closet, right? I'm in real estate as well, and people are like, "Oh, I got a big closet." I should just walk and be like, "If you want to be recording an audiobook, this is not the place to start doing that. Not a big
well,
closet. I guess the
uh,
size doesn't matter."
well, no, I mean, a bigger closet means like a little bit more elbow room, which
Okay.
is kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, depending on how you treat the space,
Mhm.
is, gonna result in the quality of your sound.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I have a question in a general sense, but I think first, Allegra, I have to make sure that, in full disclosure, I mentioned that you delightfully produced my Audible book on audiobook on the false hope of global diversification, confessions of a portfolio management maverick. So now that that's out, let me ask you a broader question. Why have you found as you've recorded people that people want to do an audiobook? What is the author's interest in doing an audiobook?
The author's interest is um, to cast a wider net for their audience, to be able to engage more people. A lot of people who, like you, Mike, who have um, produced a business book, right, of your personal reflections on your business, and something that describes and promotes the work that you do is kind of representative of a current trend of where, in order to be recognized as a thought leader, you have to have a book out now, right? You can't just have a business card,
Mhm.
right? Your book is now your business card. So, um, for authors, getting out an audiobook is enabling them to cast a wider net, to engage more people, to get more followers, um, because the audiobook industry now has been, like I mentioned before, growing at an exponential rate. Um, People now are finding that audiobook sales are rivaling print sales. So you can see a correlation of, oh, if I put an audiobook out, oh, I'm going to attract more customers, or I'm going to get more people, and be able to engage more people in my content. Um,
Mhm.
it
It's interesting.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Well, I
pretty
was
much it.
I was gonna say it's another medium, I suppose. This is more of a comment than a question. It's another medium because you might have an author that has text and they want audio, and you can do audio in different forms. There's an author, David Rubenstein, right? He does YouTube videos, and I don't think he has a podcast yet, but he took all of his interviews and then he just merged those into an audio book, and he goes to people's offices and records them and he puts them into a book. So I think it's the you want another format because people consume things in different formats, maybe.
For sure. For sure. So being able to Yeah, diversify, diversify. I know you're familiar with that term. Diversify your revenue streams, diversify your audience,
Mm,
right? You're going to attract a whole bunch of different kinds of people
mhm,
if you have those different outlets. So if you are doing a podcast, or if you have an audiobook, or a regular print or ebook, even like those two distinctions, right? Print and an ebook where it's like Kindle or
mhm,
a PDF, you're going to reach different parts of your audience, different
mhm.
types of people.
It must take a lot of work to get the author to then commit to creating an audiobook and then realize when they get into creating it, they're like, this is a lot of work, right? There's going to be audio issues. There's going to be, oh, they drank milk that day, so their throat doesn't sound good, right? How do you coach people through that initial slump of the audiobook process that I expect kind of happens right when they realize, like, I'm producing the audiobook. This is 8 hours of me talking, right? Is there that spot where they have to, like, deal with the reality of, like, this commitment?
So the editing process that we do with our authors, because we work with the authors themselves and they're not necessarily all voice audio professionals themselves. Sometimes they are, or folks who have never been on a microphone before. We we do somewhat of a coaching process, um, to where we get them comfortable. Uh, I think Mike was able to work with one of our acting coaches before he even got into the studio. So to get some of those, get some hours in
Mhm,
practicing, reading through the manuscript is super important before we get on the mic. Once we're in the studio, um, we do straight records, through records, where each chapter is pretty much just we just have the mic on, and our goal is to get the best performance possible. So once we record all of the raw audio, it takes approximately 4 times as long as
mhm.
the raw audio to
Oh,
edit. And I know you, as a podcast producer, and are you doing your own editing as
Yeah.
well? So to make sure that you hear, um, you're going through and you're hearing the best chunks of
Mhm,
what the person on the mic did, and just selecting those. So our process is we take the raw audio, it goes through an assembly process with an assembly editor. They choose the best performance bits, right? Put that all in order so they get rid of all the exterior, extra mouth noise as much as possible, any big pops or clicks, and then also puts the audio in order to make sure that the story makes sense, right? Whatever they're saying um, has a great flow. So then after that, it comes to the mix editor, and that sometimes is me or another person. And then that goes through um, a QC of sorts, of making sure that it's all, we have another software that checks the audio against the PDF, the actual manuscript, to make sure we didn't miss anything.
mhm.
We've caught some things of like, oh, look, there's that whole paragraph that's not even there. Let's go find that, that kind of thing. So we have that QC process, as well as then it goes through the mixing, making sure that the voice sounds good, the compression, all of that, those plugins in the audio editing software that makes the voice sound just so juicy and warm and intimate in listening, right? Because you want that voice right in your ear That's our audience, right? We're telling them a story right in their ears, right? We're right there with them.
Yeah.
So trying to get that sound, and then it goes to the mastering process where we get it ready for publication. And, that goes through making sure that it's all in order, that it's at the right levels, that need to go be uploaded. And yeah, and that's our process for the most part.
So it sounds like one sentence of audiobook might be composed of that sentence, but 4 different times with different chunks taken out of different parts. Is that right?
Um, Say that again. I'm sorry.
I mean, if there's a paragraph of an audiobook, right? One sentence might come from take 3, another sentence might come from take 1, because they're trying to figure out the best versions of that paragraph, both in terms of audio quality and like mouth snaps and things like that.
For the most part, I mean, we have the author recording, reading through their manuscript. And, I'm the producer, I'm in the studio with them, and I'll say, well, maybe slow it down just a little bit, or um, maybe think about such and such to give them a different attitude about whatever they're talking about. Um, we won't stop the recording, right? We'll keep the mic on. We will keep the track running. And so it'll be on that assembly editor
Mm.
to then pick out like all of those comments and, all of those pauses. Or the author themselves might say, oh, wait, no, let me do that again. Right. And
Mhm.
then say whatever they need to again. And for the most part, that's the better take, right? But yes, the assembly editor will get rid of all the other stuff.
Yeah,
Mhm.
interesting. So I want kind of going back to our original list of questions. I went on a tangent. Sorry. Who would be most appropriate to consider making an audiobook, right? Maybe would it be somebody that is familiar with they've written a book, I guess, but also maybe they're familiar with audio production in general, or is there any specific type of individual that has written a book and should consider making an audiobook?
Wait, I'm gonna have to can you say that again, please?
Yeah. Um, who would be best to consider making an audiobook?
Who is the best person to make an audiobook?
Mm,
Well, so I work with nonfiction authors, and I feel like for those folks who have written something that's either in the first person or third person, the author's my ideal of who should be reading or
mm,
narrating the audiobook. If it's someone's personal story, if it's their life story, why would you have an actor
yeah, yeah,
tell tell your life story? Unless you're just one of those billionaires that like, oh, I don't care. Anybody can tell my story.
yeah.
But I feel a lot more powerful when someone can relate their own story, their own experiences. A lot of the personality, sense of humor comes through in the audio when someone is recounting their own personal history,
Hmm.
right? Their own experiences. Whereas an actor might not get that, right? You have someone's, tears. You have someone's uh, sense of humor, right? That comes through in the writing um, that the reader has to imagine, but that the listener can totally hear, right? In someone's voice.
Hmm. It's interesting. Even for like a fiction book or a nonfiction book that's not about a specific person, but sometimes the narrator just makes or breaks the story because it's sometimes it's hard to listen to. But specific accents for me, I'm like I can't do it. Like northern English accents, very hard for me to listen to. Not that they're not telling a good story. It's just there's no like dynamics in the accent. That's just me though. I'm sure everybody has some specific type of accent that they're not a fan of. They're not saying the words right, but I feel like the narration really makes or breaks the story.
You know, everyone's different.
Yeah.
Everyone has their favorites of what they can listen to and what they can't. For me, like I just make audiobooks. I don't necessarily listen to a whole lot
Oh.
of them. I do love to listen to podcasts though,
Yeah.
because I do love to listen in on people's conversations,
Yeah.
and in
It's
that
very
sense.
true.
But for audiobooks, it's definitely a personal preference
Mhm.
because I'm an audio professional, because I am someone who, is already very critical in listening to a production, right? And the production quality, that's where my mind goes,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, that all those clicks, all that mouth noise, I can't take it,
Yeah.
and I will be distracted
Yeah.
from the actual story. So,
No,
um,
I know what you mean.
I'm a page turner. I really do love to hold a book in my hand and turn the page. I like to smell the pages. I love, I love to read.
Mhm.
And I love how my mind can connect um, to that information. And for me as well, I'm a very visual rememberer. I think I don't know how you would call that, but I make audio content. Besides audiobooks, I produce music. I am a composer. I produce music for listening, for films, for uh, commercials, whatever, that kind of stuff. So um, it's yeah, I'm an audio. Oh, what do you call it? I guess yeah,
Audiophile?
a content producer.
Okay.
A content producer. Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello. A quick reminder to check out justbuildwealth.co for all past episodes and the transcripts for the episodes. Also at justbuildwealth.co, you can find links to register for upcoming continuing education webinars. While you're there, pick up a copy of The False Hope of Global Diversification. Now, back to our conversation with Allegra Bandy.
So, Allegra, I can speak to my own experience, but I don't want to. I want to get a more general answer to this. What have you found with the authors that you've worked with? They tell you is the most challenging part of doing an audiobook. What do they tell you?
I think just starting off, I think the realization of like, oh, I don't think I can do this. Why would anyone want to listen to me? I think it's an attitude adjustment that needs to happen. Um, a lot of people are just nervous and might not believe in themselves enough that their voice is good enough, or that it matters, or um, that it would sound good. But when you think about some of the great actors that we've seen throughout the last century, um, that have come through, and or musicians who have come through that have been memorable, that have done great things. If you think about a lot of the voices that have come through in the last century, right? Voices of actors, speakers, people who have changed the world. Not all of them necessarily have had like these gorgeous voices, right? Think of Louis Armstrong,
Mm.
right? Someone who has this crazy gravelly voice, but was an amazing musician, wrote so much music, put out so much music, sang, right? In a way that no one else could. He had a very unique voice. I try and relate that to my clients, to say that their voice is their own unique treasure, right? No one else sounds like them. And it's so important for them, for their voice to be heard and their writing to be heard through their voice.
And on the flip side, Allegra, are there those who tell you this is the easy part, or do they remark on what the easiest thing about doing that audiobook has been for them? What's been the easiest part for these authors? What have they done almost effortlessly in terms of producing the audiobook?
Oh, I think it ranges for everyone. I think for some people, it's listening to themselves. A lot of people have trouble being able to listen to themselves and end up being really critical about how their voice sounds, or oh, I can't believe I sound like that, or um but the easiest part is, I don't know, I think it differs. I don't know what they feel, honestly.
What did you
Mike,
think?
what did you
Yeah,
feel?
yeah, yeah.
What do you think was the easiest thing for you in your recording process?
The easiest thing was being able to restate the content, because as you pointed out, I'm very insistent that after a long career, well, I'm not after, in the midst of a long career, there are some central truths, and being able to discuss those central truths was the easiest part. Because those things are not some of my central truths are not in line with what the industry and the traditionalists believe. So that was for me the easiest part.
Were there some
Speak.
words that were hard to get out?
Oh yeah, well, I that's why I wanted to have a more general description of what was difficult. Yeah, my deal is my penchant for multi-syllabic words, and how that will affect the next edition.
Yeah, simplify it, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I got a question about manuscripts. I think I read on your website that the first thing to do is have your manuscript ready, and it sounds like maybe a manuscript is just a book, or is it just a book, right? How does a book compare to a manuscript? Are they the same thing? Are they totally different?
Yeah, they're pretty much the same thing. When I refer to the manuscript, I mean, the text itself.
Hmm.
If I say like a book, I might be referring to the actual product, um, where you have the the title page. It's the actual product.
Hmm.
Um,
Got it.
but the manuscript is the text, right? What is going to be narrated?
Hmm. One of the things we were talking about earlier was that it's so you have narrating by yourself or narrating your own book, and then you hiring a professional to narrate the book. I suppose a lot of people do hire professionals because, they consider themselves authors and that's it, right? But I've listened to a book written by both an author and the next book by that author read by somebody else, right? And there's obviously a difference. And some people are like, you should have got the other guy. You're not as good at this. So I'm curious, like, what are the dynamics between why somebody would choose to do self narration versus say, I want this professionally narrated?
Well, I think not everyone wants to narrate their own books. I work with people who want to narrate their own books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone wants to go through the process of preparing and working and doing that kind of work, right? And that's fine. If it really is a personal choice that everyone should be able to make themselves. Um, that if I would say when it comes down to personal history, personal memoir,
Yeah.
um, it's ideal if the author is able to narrate it themselves. But let's say it is a biography that maybe the author, or autobiography, or whatever personal memoir, the author is no longer with us,
Yeah.
right? How can we then replicate um, them as a person, as a
Sure.
voice, right? Um, if possible, interview those folks who knew them, find old recordings of them if possible. But that's not always possible.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes you don't have a choice.
it's really a process for an actor to make happen.
Hmm. That
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense. So you have Oddua Publishing, and there's also Oddua Productions.
Correct.
Which one came first? Did one arise from the other, just based upon like market demand, or how did they emerge?
For sure. Well, it all started in 2006 with Ottawa Records,
Oh,
where I was publishing music with a business partner, and she moved away and left me with the company, and I was had started to be commissioned to do video and music for video and public service announcements for children, a lot of stuff that was like more in the multimedia world. And so I closed down Ottawa Records and started Ottawa Productions in 2010. Um, and from there, branched out, uh, doing all those different multimedia stuff, including live performance. I'm also a professional live vocalist and singer, and perform live to this
yeah.
day. Um, so it became Ottawa Productions in 2011. I was helping to build out the first recording studio that I worked on. I was working as the operations manager for the Center for Investigative Reporting,
Hmm.
and we were building out new offices, and I saw a space there that I thought would be ideal for a recording studio, and persuaded uh, folks to fundraise in building that out. And so after we built that out, I wanted a project that was separate from CIR, that I could kind of cut my teeth on the audio editing software, Pro Tools, and really get that down, and also work out the bugs of the studio. Um, and I approached an author friend of mine, Dossie Easton, who is the co-author of The Ethical Slut, with Janet Hardy, and said, "Hey, you ever think about turning Slut into an audiobook?" And she said, "Well, actually, yes."
Hmm.
So, and that was right when Audible was bought out by Amazon.
Okay.
And Audible, was this DIY audiobook platform that was brand new, that people, it was just coming out onto the market, and made it really doable for getting audiobooks out into the world, and for people to produce audiobooks themselves. Um, so that was the first audiobook that I did. We did the second edition English version. That book has been translated into like 9 different languages now, but
Wow.
we did the second edition English, and
Wow.
are coming out with the third edition English version, probably sometime, hopefully this year, if not next year. I don't know. Warner Brothers picked it up to do a Netflix series, so I'm not sure when. I have to kind of gauge when it's.
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
that's probably when we'll release that. But yeah, so it's been these last 11 years of producing audiobooks with authors, having them narrate. So since then, um, getting more and more folks, as the industry has grown, and as people are
mhm.
starting to realize, oh, I could make my own audiobook. Like, yes, you can, for sure.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you mentioned, I'm just going to jump in here really quickly, is that there was so you're building a studio, but most of the time it's you go to them, and do you have to like help them set up their own little home studio in that case, or how does that work?
Um, well, have I have through Ottawa Productions kind of given like consultations
Yeah.
to individuals, to companies on how to build out studios for podcasting,
Mm.
for narration, um, for schools, for other nonprofit organizations. Um, I have consulted on that
Mhm.
multiple times. Yeah, it, I
So I'm thinking of author strategy, Allegra. So
yes,
there's this multiple platforms, Spotify, Apple. We have these podcasts on my Just Build Wealth website. Do authors ever come to you and ask about which platforms to use, or is it smartest to just put them on all of them? And kind of the follow on is, do you find different types of consumption of audiobooks depending on the different platform that they're on?
for sure. I would say, all the different distribution platforms that are out there now. I think there's probably like 50 or 60. We get we cast a wide net with our clients. Um, and I would say, a good strategy would be to put it out on as many viable platforms as you can, and then take a couple of years to see where it did the best. For different audiobooks, it might do better on Spotify, it might do better on Google Play, it might do better on Hoopla or Audible. You can't really tell. uh, Excuse me. You can't really tell until you get some time in those platforms to see and get that data, right? So you can see, well, how many have been bought? At what time of year are people buying these? And, were there, and looking back on that data, were there um, different points in the year where they did well because of either social media events, live events. You could have had a speaking engagement that you were able to do a lot of marketing around, and engaged a lot of people at that time. And all these people were going to your website. Oh, and finding out that you have an audiobook. Oh, great. Where can I get that? That kind of thing. For authors, right, who are trying to expand their reach, right? Having an audiobook is just another tool in the toolbox, right? Of um, capturing their audience, their followers, um, their folks who they
Mhm.
want, their community, right? Who they want to engage with, um,
It sounds
or
like
who they want to serve, right?
it sounds like it's a very long strategy, right? You're saying you want to look at the data over years. It's not just like, oh, this week it did great. What'll it do next week? It needs to be a year-long thing.
Are the economics, what you get in terms of what that particular platform pays from the gross price, from the off the shelf price? What does the author get? Is that different from one platform to another, or
It
is that
is
all the
different.
same?
Oh yeah. No, each of the different distribution platforms takes their own cut, right? And that could range from 20% to 90%.
Really?
Really?
It depends. It depends. I know Audible takes for their non-exclusive content, right? Because they have a
Mhm.
couple of different packages that you can subscribe to in getting out your audiobook. Um, if it is a Audible exclusive release, right? Publication, that's a fixed 60/40 split,
Mm.
right?
With
And
Amazon getting the more of that, right?
don't you think? Yeah,
Oh man.
for sure. Um, and so then, yeah, so then you have that 40% left over for the the rights holders.
Hmm.
Um, for their non-exclusive package, right, it's a 20/80 split.
And that means Amazon gets 80 or Audible gets 80%.
Correct.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah,
because they
so
have the
then
distribution, I guess, right? They can
they
pull that,
have
I guess.
the power.
Yeah.
Yes. It's it's kind of ridiculous. Um, and that's Audible, right?
Yeah.
Not all the platforms have that same structure. Um, and yeah, they're all a little bit different. When Audible started, though, it started with graded um, a graded system where it started at a 50/50 split, but then the more audiobooks that you sold, the higher the percentage you as the rights holder would get, and the less Amazon would get. And at in 2014, Audible made that switch of a fixed 60/40 split. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's Amazon. They figured out how to get their pound of flesh
Hmm.
for sure.
So the other platforms, Spotify and the like,
Mm.
the cut is better for the author, I'm assuming. And my sense is that
You can't assume that, Mike.
is that right?
You
So,
can't
so
assume that.
tell me what the reality is, Allegra.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't have that data in front of me. Um, but it is not necessarily favorable to the author.
I wanted to ask about the how podcasting is affecting the audiobook industry. Has that had a big effect on just the general work that you guys are doing? Is there more of it because of that?
It only promotes it.
Yeah.
I feel like, having authors be able to speak about their books or promote themselves through podcasting, people are able to engage with the authors in a different way than they
Yeah.
would be engaging with them through their books, right? So it gives their followers or the people that they want to reach an opportunity to get to know them a little bit better. I'm sure it has positively influenced the audiobook industry.
Mhm. Interesting. Well, this has been a cool deep dive into just the world of producing an audiobook, what the industry looks like, how Oddua came to be. I think we are ready to go to the final four questions. Are you ready for that?
The final
The
four.
final
Okay.
four. So the first one, we asked everybody these questions, and I'm curious. I like to know like how people's thinking has developed over the years in terms of which books or media or podcasts, audiobooks in this case. Um, is there a specific type of media that has guided your thinking over the years? As in like specific like maybe it was a documentary or an episode or a book or a article, something like that. Anything that jumps out?
So my company's mission is to produce audiobooks that help people. And in, a lot of the soul searching that I'm sure all of us did during the pandemic,
Mm,
right? That was one of the things that kind of helped me guide um, guide my path in the work that I do. Um, there have been multiple books and speakers who have helped to kind of reinforce that, you know, the things that I want to put out into the world, I want to be able to help others make their lives better. And so, um, one one book that stands out, or content that stands out.
yeah. Maybe one of the books that you produced yourself too.
Oh, mm, "Breaking Through Your Own Glass Ceiling" by Linda
Mm,
Gonzalez. We produced that audiobook with her in 2020. And really helps people to examine their own attitudes about um, how far they can go in life, you know, of what they want in life and what's holding them back from getting it.
Hmm.
I thought that was one of the more powerful things that have come out in the last few years, um, that help that has helped me, that has helped so many other people. She's a life coach, and um, she's helping her clients kind of helping them to reach their goals.
Hmm. Love it. This kind of goes along the same lines. This is the tools that you love. So we ask people what tools do they love using, and sometimes they're like work tools, like, oh, I love using LinkedIn or Calendly or Asana. I've heard that. I love Text Expander. That's my favorite. But maybe you have a different tool that you like use every day, and you love using this tool. Anything jump out?
Calendly,
Calendly.
Calendly changed my life for sure. That is one of them. Another one would be Google Calendar. The whole
Big on the
Google suite.
calendars.
Big on the calendars, you know, one of those very disorganized teenagers who had a paper calendar and then went to a high school with like a 6-day rotational schedule. So like,
You
it
got to
was
make it work.
it had to figure it out, make it work. But the Google Suite, right?
Hmm.
I think really changed the way a lot of people worked. Being able to work with my team, my marketing person, my fundraising person, um, uh, in collaboration on documents,
Yeah.
been amazing. Um, Spreadsheets. um, yeah, that's been one. Another tool. Um, let's see.
You said you
My
use Pro Tools, right?
I do. For audiobooks, for
Hmm.
recording, definitely, for tracking the audio. That's been great. But I do use Logic when I'm composing and for like sketching out music. And I just feel like I like the virtual instruments on there better.
Yeah.
I feel like it's easier to use. But yeah, I've used Logic, Pro Tools, Adobe Audition.
Yeah.
Um, what is that other one? Hindenburg.
Yeah,
You
I feel like Hindenburg's like the big institutional juggernaut, but maybe they're not. I
uh,
don't know.
yeah, it kind of is, but not. It's actually very simplified. I
Okay.
know it was created for journalists, so for them to kind of be able to crank out whatever they needed to
Hmm.
simply. I
Yeah.
don't know. I like using Pro Tools for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So what is your favorite thing to do outside of content creation?
Outside of content creation, I love to hike. I love to be in nature. I love to be outdoors, um, as much as I can. And
You live in the Bay Area, right? Oakland?
yes,
Have you
yes.
ever been to
So,
Muir Woods?
oh yes,
Uh,
for sure. Yeah, no, Muir Woods is one of those very magical
I
places in the
totally
San
get it.
Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
it's
amazing.
gorgeous. Old growth redwoods
The
are
big ones.
the big ones are
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, no, so in Oakland we have huge redwood forests up in the hills,
Mm.
in the Oakland Hills, and so I go hiking up there, go spend some time smelling them, smelling all the bay laurel. We've had all this rain, so
Yeah.
everything just
Oh,
smells so amazing. You know,
interesting. I hadn't thought about
yeah,
that one. It's a different scent entirely.
yeah, bay laurels, eucalyptus, and yeah, the Bay Area is amazing. It has so many different landscapes. I
Mhm.
spent some time in the desert this past summer, um, not really thinking like, oh yeah, that's probably not the best time of year to go, but I really enjoyed it. I just,
Yeah.
love being in the outdoors, love like very vast landscapes.
Hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So if somebody's trying to find you, where can they look? Where can you be found?
Yeah, they can go to OdduaPublishing.com or OdduaProductions.com and see the different projects we've got going on there. They can reach me. The contact information is on those sites.
Mhm.
And I work in Oakland, but I also work with folks all over the country. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Allegra Bandy, we appreciate you coming on Just Build Wealth. This has been a wealth of information, learning about how the industry works, what the process is. If you're an author and you're interested in making a book, it's been a great just download of information about what that process looks like, and we will leave it there. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Just Build Wealth podcast with Allegra Bandy. You can get the show notes at justbuildwealth.co/Allegra, Allegra. Also at justbuildwealth.co, you can register for upcoming continuing education webinars, and you can join our newsletter to get notified when upcoming new webinars and podcasts are released. This podcast is free to listen to, but if you share, we can create more content and continue having excellent conversations. So, as my favorite podcast host, Jordan Harbinger, says, we rise by lifting others. Rate this in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Share and give us feedback because we want to continue making great content. Thanks so much.